The housekeeper consoled the millionaire's daughter. At night, he was frozen when he saw the cameras. The rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office in downtown Portland, Oregon, as Marcus Caldwell stared at the security monitor with an expression of complete bewilderment. His hands trembled slightly as he rewound the footage for the third time, unable to process what he was witnessing on the screen before him. It was 2:47 a.m. according to the timestamp, and there was Esperanza Morales, his housekeeper of 3 years, sitting on the edge of his 8-year-old daughter Chloe's bed. But this wasn't a typical tucking-in scene. Chloe was sobbing uncontrollably, her small frame shaking with each cry, while Esperanza held her close, gently stroking her hair and whispering something that the audio couldn't quite pick up. Marcus had installed the security cameras throughout his $4.2 million penthouse after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood 6 months ago. He never expected to use them to spy on his own household, but insomnia had driven him to check the feeds during another sleepless night of reviewing merger documents and drowning his sorrows in expensive whiskey. What struck him most wasn't just the tenderness of the moment, but the duration. The timestamp showed this had been going on for over an hour. Esperanza hadn't simply comforted Chloe and left. She had stayed, talking quietly, even singing what appeared to be a lullaby in Spanish. She had brought tissues, a glass of water, and what looked like one of her own sweaters to wrap around the child. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he watched his daughter's sobs gradually subside. When had he last seen Chloe cry? When had he last comforted her? The realization hit him like a physical blow. He couldn't remember the last time he had been in her room after bedtime, let alone noticed she was distressed. The footage continued, and Marcus watched as Esperanza carefully arranged Chloe's blankets, checked the nightlight, and even straightened the stuffed animals on the shelf. She moved with the familiarity of someone who had done this many times before. How many nights had this been happening? How many times had his daughter needed comfort while he sat in his office, consumed by business deals and financial projections? As he continued watching, something else caught his attention. Esperanza pulled out a small, worn notebook from her apron pocket and began writing something. She showed it to Chloe, who managed a small smile through her tears. They seemed to be having a conversation about whatever was written on that page, and gradually, Chloe's breathing became more regular, her eyelids growing heavy. The most shocking moment came when Chloe whispered something to Esperanza, who responded by kissing the child's forehead and saying something that made Chloe nod seriously. It was clear this wasn't the first time they had shared this kind of intimate moment. There was a routine here, a bond that Marcus had been completely unaware of. Marcus paused the video and rubbed his eyes, feeling the familiar burn of too little sleep and too much alcohol. His wife Amanda had died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving him to raise Chloe alone. But if he was being honest with himself, he hadn't really been raising her at all. Between his responsibilities as CEO of Caldwell Industries and his struggle to cope with grief, he had essentially delegated his daughter's care to a rotation of nannies and housekeepers. Esperanza had been different from the others. She was quiet, efficient, and never complained about working late or weekends. She spoke limited English, which Marcus had actually preferred because it meant fewer conversations and interruptions. She cleaned, cooked, and kept the household running smoothly, while he focused on keeping his company from falling apart after Amanda's death. But now, watching this footage, Marcus realized he had been viewing Esperanza as merely hired help when she had clearly become something much more significant in Chloe's life. The way his daughter had nestled into her arms, the way she had trusted her with whatever was causing her distress, spoke to a relationship that had developed far beyond employer and employee. Marcus reached for his glass of bourbon, his third of the evening, and took a long sip as he contemplated what he had just witnessed. The timestamp showed that this scene had taken place just last night, while he had been in his office until 3 a.m., completely oblivious to his daughter's tears just down the hall. He scrolled through more of the archived footage, his curiosity now fully awakened. If this had happened last night, how many other nights had similar scenes played out? How long had Esperanza been serving as the mother figure that Chloe desperately needed, while he remained emotionally absent? What Marcus found in the following hours of footage would challenge everything he thought he knew about his household, his daughter, and the quiet woman who had been taking care of them both, without him ever realizing the depth of her care. But for now, as he sat in his leather chair surrounded by the trappings of his success, Marcus Caldwell was forced to confront a truth that would change everything. He had been failing as a father, and a woman he barely knew had been picking up the pieces of his daughter's broken heart night after night, while he remained completely unaware of the depth of his child's pain. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical for Portland in November. Marcus had barely slept, his mind racing with questions about what he had discovered on the security footage. By 6 a.m., he was already dressed and standing in his kitchen, watching as Esperanza moved quietly around the space, preparing breakfast with her usual efficiency. She was a woman in her early 40s, with graying hair always pulled back in a neat bun, and hands that showed the wear of years of hard work. Marcus realized he had never really looked at her before. Not truly. She was simply part of the household machinery, someone who appeared in the morning and disappeared in the evening, keeping his world organized while he focused on business. This morning, however, he found himself studying her movements with new eyes. She hummed softly to herself as she scrambled eggs, a melody he didn't recognize but found oddly comforting. When she heard his footsteps on the marble floor, she looked up with a polite smile. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell. Your coffee is ready. Would you like your usual breakfast?" Her accent was thick, her English careful and formal. Marcus noticed for the first time that she always seemed slightly nervous around him, as if she was constantly worried about making a mistake. "Actually, Esperanza, I wanted to ask you something." Marcus poured himself coffee from the expensive machine Amanda had insisted on buying. "How has Chloe been sleeping lately?" Something flickered across Esperanza's face, so quickly that Marcus almost missed it. She continued stirring the eggs, but her shoulders tensed slightly. "She sleeps fine, Mr. Caldwell. No problems." It was clearly a lie, and not a particularly good one. Marcus felt a surge of frustration, but also a recognition that Esperanza might be trying to protect either Chloe or him from uncomfortable truths. "I see. And she's been happy at school? No complaints or concerns?" This time, Esperanza set down her wooden spoon and looked at him directly. There was something in her dark eyes that Marcus couldn't quite read, a mixture of concern and what might have been disappointment. "Chloe is a good girl, Mr. Caldwell. Very smart, very kind. But—" She hesitated, clearly weighing her words carefully. "But what? Sometimes children need more than just food and clean clothes. They need someone to talk to, someone to listen." The implicit criticism in her words was gentle but unmistakable. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He was providing for his daughter perfectly well. The private school tuition alone cost more than most people made in a year. Chloe had everything she could possibly need. "She has everything she needs," he said, his voice cooler than he intended. Esperanza nodded slowly, but her expression suggested she disagreed. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell. I just mean that sometimes she seems lonely." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of small footsteps on the stairs announced Chloe's arrival. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing her St. Catherine's Academy uniform, her blonde hair neatly braided and her backpack slung over one shoulder. But Marcus noticed something he had missed before: the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders seemed to carry a weight too heavy for an 8-year-old. "Good morning, Daddy," she said quietly, giving him a quick hug before moving toward Esperanza. The transformation was immediate and striking. Chloe's entire demeanor changed as she approached the housekeeper. Her face brightened, her posture relaxed, and she began chattering in a mixture of English and Spanish that clearly delighted Esperanza. Marcus watched, fascinated and somewhat disturbed, as his daughter helped Esperanza set the table, their conversation flowing easily despite the language barrier. Chloe seemed comfortable in a way that she never did around him. When was the last time she had hugged him with genuine affection rather than obligation? "Esperanza taught me how to make pancakes in Spanish yesterday," Chloe announced, looking at her father hopefully. "Tortitas. Would you like to try some?" Marcus glanced at his watch. He had a breakfast meeting in 45 minutes with potential investors from Tokyo. "Maybe this weekend, sweetheart. Daddy has to work." The light in Chloe's eyes dimmed slightly, and she nodded with the resigned acceptance of a child who had heard those words too many times. Marcus felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. Providing for their future was more important than cooking lessons. As Chloe ate her eggs and toast, Marcus noticed how she kept glancing at Esperanza, who was packing the child's lunch. There was an easy intimacy between them that made Marcus feel like an outsider in his own home. When Esperanza slipped a small piece of paper into Chloe's lunchbox, his daughter smiled secretively. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "Just a note," Chloe said, but she exchanged a look with Esperanza that suggested it was something more significant. After Chloe left for school with the driver, Marcus lingered in the kitchen, ostensibly checking emails on his phone, but actually observing Esperanza as she cleaned up. She worked with the same quiet efficiency as always, but now he noticed small details that had escaped him before. The way she carefully washed Chloe's favorite mug by hand instead of putting it in the dishwasher. How she arranged the remaining fruit in the bowl to look more appealing. The small stack of children's books in Spanish that sat on the counter, clearly brought from her own home. "Esperanza," he said suddenly, causing her to look up from the sink. "How long have you been helping Chloe at night?" She froze, her hands still soapy, and Marcus saw fear flash across her face. She clearly thought she was in trouble. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. I know I should have asked permission, but she was crying and I couldn't just leave her. I will stop if you want me to." "I'm not angry," Marcus said quickly, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. "I just want to understand. Why has she been crying?" Esperanza dried her hands slowly, clearly choosing her words with care. "She misses her mama very much, and sometimes she has bad dreams. She thinks about the accident." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He had assumed Chloe was adjusting well to life without Amanda. She rarely mentioned her mother anymore, and she had stopped asking when Mommy was coming home months ago. He had taken this as a sign that she was healing, moving on. "She talks about the accident?" "Sometimes. She worries that you will have an accident too, when you work so late. She worries that she will be alone." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His late nights at the office, which he justified as necessary for providing for their future, were actually terrifying his daughter. While he thought he was being responsible, Chloe was lying awake worrying that she would lose her only remaining parent. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Esperanza looked uncomfortable. "You are always very busy, Mr. Caldwell, and I thought maybe it was not my place to say." Marcus realized that his distance, his formal relationship with his household staff, had created a barrier that prevented him from knowing what was happening in his own home. Esperanza had been trying to respect boundaries that were ultimately harmful to everyone involved. As he left for his meeting that morning, Marcus's mind was churning with questions. How many nights had Chloe lain awake, terrified and alone, while he worked late? How many times had Esperanza stepped in to provide comfort that should have come from him? And most disturbingly, what other aspects of his daughter's emotional life was he completely unaware of? The investigation had only just begun, but already Marcus was discovering that the life he thought he had built for his daughter was built on a foundation of neglect and misunderstanding. That evening, Marcus made an unusual decision. Instead of retreating to his office after dinner, he told Chloe he would read her a bedtime story. The look of surprise and delight on her face made him realize how rare such moments had become. Chloe's room was a shrine to childhood privilege. The walls were painted a soft lavender, her favorite color, and lined with built-in bookshelves filled with classics and contemporary children's literature. A collection of stuffed animals sat arranged on a window seat overlooking the city, and her bed was adorned with a custom-made canopy that Amanda had designed before her death. But as Marcus tucked his daughter into the expensive Egyptian cotton sheets, he noticed things that troubled him. The stuffed animals looked untouched, arranged more for show than comfort. The books on the lower shelves, the ones within Chloe's reach, were mostly in Spanish. On her nightstand sat a small framed photo of Amanda, but next to it was something that made Marcus pause. A handmade bookmark with "Para mi niña especial" written in careful script. "Esperanza made that for me," Chloe explained, following his gaze. "It means, for my special girl. She's teaching me to read in Spanish." Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude that someone was nurturing his daughter's intellectual growth, but also a stab of jealousy that it wasn't him. When had he last helped Chloe with anything educational outside of hiring tutors? As he read from a picture book about a lonely princess, Marcus couldn't help but notice how Chloe hung on every word, how she snuggled closer to him as if afraid he might disappear. When the story ended, she looked up at him with hopeful eyes. "Daddy, can you stay a little longer? Just until I fall asleep?" Something in her voice, a note of desperate need, made Marcus's chest tighten. "Of course, sweetheart." But as the minutes ticked by and Chloe's breathing didn't settle into the rhythm of sleep, Marcus began to understand what Esperanza had been dealing with. His daughter was clearly anxious, her small body tense despite the comfortable surroundings. "Daddy?" Chloe's voice was small in the darkened room. "Yes? Do you think Mommy is watching us from heaven?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He and Amanda had never been particularly religious, and after her death, he had avoided spiritual discussions with Chloe, not knowing how to navigate them. I think she would want us to be happy," he said finally. "Esperanza says Mommy is like a guardian angel now, watching over us to make sure we're safe. She says that's why the roses in our garden bloom so beautifully, because Mommy is taking care of them." Marcus felt a pang of recognition. Amanda had loved the rose garden on their penthouse terrace. After her death, he had considered having it removed, unable to bear the reminder. But somehow, the roses had continued to thrive. He had assumed the building's maintenance staff was caring for them, but now he wondered if Esperanza had taken on that responsibility too. "Esperanza told you that?" "She tells me lots of things about Mommy. She says Mommy would want me to be brave and kind, and to remember that even when people go away, love stays forever." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. These were conversations he should have been having with his daughter, comfort he should have been providing. Instead, a woman he barely knew had been helping Chloe process her grief, while he had been consumed by his own pain and work obligations. "Chloe, are you scared at night? Is that why you sometimes cry?" His daughter was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might have fallen asleep. Then she whispered, "Sometimes I have dreams that you don't come home from work, like what happened to Mommy." The admission hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. His daughter was living with the constant fear of losing her remaining parent, and his frequent absences were feeding that terror. While he thought he was being responsible by working hard, he was actually traumatizing the person he was supposedly working to protect. "Sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere, I promise." That's what Esperanza says too. She says she won't let anything happen to me, that she'll always be here to take care of me. The words stung. His housekeeper was making promises that Marcus, as Chloe's father, should have been making. She was providing security and stability that he had abdicated. Over the next hour, as Chloe finally drifted off to sleep, Marcus stayed in the chair beside her bed, watching her face relax in the glow of the nightlight. He tried to remember the last time he had simply observed his daughter, really looked at her. She was growing up so fast, and he was missing it, too caught up in his own grief and responsibilities to notice that she was struggling with her own. The next morning, Marcus made another unusual decision. He called his assistant and canceled his morning meetings, then waited in the kitchen for Esperanza to arrive. When she walked through the door at 7 a.m., as punctual as always, he was sitting at the breakfast bar with 2 cups of coffee. "Esperanza, sit down. I want to talk to you." She looked nervous, settling into the chair across from him, as if she expected to be fired. "You're not in trouble," Marcus said quickly. "I want to thank you. And I want to understand what's been happening with Chloe." What followed was the longest conversation Marcus had ever had with his housekeeper. Gradually, as Esperanza realized she wasn't being criticized, she began to open up about her observations of Chloe over the past months. The picture she painted was devastating. A lonely child who talked to her stuffed animals because she had no one else to confide in. A little girl who did her homework alone every evening, hoping her father might check on her progress. A daughter who set a place at the dinner table for her father every night, even though he rarely came home in time to eat with her. "She is so proud of you, Mr. Caldwell," Esperanza said gently. "She tells everyone at school that her daddy is the most important businessman in Portland, but she doesn't understand why being important means you can't be with her." Marcus felt ashamed as he realized how his 8-year-old daughter must perceive his priorities. To her, his work wasn't a sacrifice he was making for their future. It was a choice he was making instead of her. "The nights when she cries," Marcus said. "How often does that happen?" Esperanza hesitated. "Maybe 3, 4 times a week. Usually after you work very late. Or when she hears you on the phone talking about business trips. 3 or 4 times a week." His daughter was breaking down emotionally several times a week, and he had been completely oblivious. "And you've been comforting her all this time?" "I have 3 children of my own, Mr. Caldwell. I know what it looks like when a child needs love." The gentle rebuke in her words was unmistakable. Marcus had been so focused on providing material security that he had forgotten to provide emotional security. Meanwhile, a woman who worked for minimum wage and had her own family to worry about had been giving his daughter the maternal care she desperately needed. As Esperanza prepared to start her daily tasks, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. "Esperanza, I want you to teach me. Show me how to comfort her when she's scared. Help me understand what she needs." The look of surprise on the housekeeper's face quickly gave way to something that looked like relief. For the first time since Marcus had known her, Esperanza smiled at him with genuine warmth. "She needs you, Mr. Caldwell. That's what she needs most of all." Over the next few days, Marcus found himself conducting a different kind of investigation. Instead of reviewing security footage, he began paying attention to the rhythm of his own household. He started coming home for dinner, initially awkward and unsure how to engage with his daughter after months of minimal interaction. The first few evenings were stilted affairs. Chloe seemed almost afraid to talk too much, as if she was worried about boring him or keeping him from work. But gradually, as Marcus showed consistent interest in her day, her stories, her concerns, she began to open up. What he discovered broke his heart. Chloe had been dealing with bullying at her prestigious private school, something he had been completely unaware of. A group of girls had been taunting her about not having a mother, calling her the sad orphan girl. She had been afraid to tell him because she didn't want to add to his worries. "I told Esperanza about it," Chloe admitted one evening as they sat in the living room after dinner. "She said that people sometimes say mean things when they don't understand how much someone is hurting. She said Mommy would want me to be strong, but also to tell a grown-up when I need help." Marcus felt a surge of anger at himself. His daughter had been suffering at school, dealing with cruel classmates alone, while he remained oblivious in his ivory tower of business concerns. Once again, Esperanza had been the adult, providing guidance and support. "Why didn't you tell me about the bullying?" Chloe looked down at her hands. "You're always tired when you come home, and you have so many important things to worry about. I didn't want to bother you with my problems." The matter-of-fact way she said it revealed how thoroughly Marcus had trained his daughter to not expect emotional availability from him. She had learned to see herself as a burden rather than his priority. That night, Marcus made another decision. He called the headmistress of St. Catherine's Academy and scheduled a meeting for the following day. If his daughter was being bullied, he was going to address it immediately and personally. The meeting revealed another layer of his failures as a parent. Mrs. Davidson, the school counselor, had been trying to reach him for weeks about Chloe's emotional state. His assistant had been fielding the calls, noting them in messages that Marcus had never returned. "Chloe is a bright, sweet child," Mrs. Davidson explained, "but she's been showing signs of anxiety and depression. She often seems tired in class, and her teachers report that she sometimes starts crying for no apparent reason. We've been hoping to discuss support strategies with you." Marcus felt sick. His daughter had been struggling so visibly that her teachers were concerned, and he had been too busy to even return their calls. What kind of support does she need? Primarily, she needs stability and emotional connection at home. Children who have lost a parent often develop separation anxiety, especially if they feel their remaining parent might also leave them. "Has Chloe expressed any fears about losing you?" Marcus thought about his daughter's nighttime tears, her worry that he might not come home from work. "Yes, she has. That's very common. The best thing you can do is create predictable routines, be present for important moments, and most importantly, make sure she feels heard and valued. Children need to know that their feelings matter to the adults in their lives." As Marcus walked back to his car after the meeting, he felt the weight of his failures pressing down on him. Every revelation showed him more clearly how much damage his emotional absence had caused. His daughter was struggling with anxiety and depression, largely because he had been too consumed with his own grief and work obligations to provide the stability she needed. That evening, he found Esperanza in the kitchen, preparing dinner as usual. But this time, he noticed details that had escaped him before. She was making Chloe's favorite meal, chicken enchiladas with rice and beans. She had bought flowers for the table, bright yellow daisies that brightened the whole room. And she was humming again, that same soft melody he had heard before. "Esperanza, can I ask you something personal?" She looked up from the stove, nodding. "You have children of your own, right? How do you manage to care for Chloe when you have your own family to worry about?" For the first time since he had known her, Esperanza's composure cracked slightly. She wiped her hands on her apron and sat down across from him at the kitchen island. "My children are older now, Mr. Caldwell. 15, 17, and 19. They don't need me the same way anymore. But Chloe, She reminds me of my youngest when she was small. The same big eyes, the same way of carrying sadness that's too heavy for such a little person. It must be hard, working here when you have your own family responsibilities. Esperanza was quiet for a moment. My husband died 4 years ago. Heart attack, very sudden. After that, I had to work 2 jobs to support my children. This job, it pays well enough that I only need 1 job now. But more than that, taking care of Chloe, it helps me too. It reminds me what it feels like to nurture someone who needs nurturing. Marcus felt a shift in his understanding. He had been viewing Esperanza as simply hired help. But she was a woman who had experienced her own profound loss, who understood grief and single parenthood in ways he was only beginning to grasp. Her care for Chloe wasn't just professional obligation. It was genuine maternal instinct combined with her own healing process. I'm sorry about your husband. Thank you. It's been hard, but my children and I, we take care of each other. That's what families do. The simple statement hit Marcus with unexpected force. That's what families do. They take care of each other. But he hadn't been taking care of Chloe. Not really. He had been providing for her materially while leaving her emotional needs to be met by someone else. Esperanza, I want to do better. I want to be the father Chloe needs. But I don't know how. I don't know how to comfort her when she's scared, or how to help her with the bullying at school, or how to talk to her about missing her mother. Esperanza studied his face for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him with something important. Mr. Caldwell, can I show you something? She disappeared for a moment and returned with a small notebook, the same one Marcus had seen her writing in on the security footage. She opened it and handed it to him. The pages were filled with observations about Chloe, written in a mixture of English and Spanish. Notes about what made her happy, what frightened her, what comforted her when she was sad. Dates when she had particular difficult days, along with explanations of what had triggered them. Lists of her favorite foods, books, songs, and activities. It was a comprehensive record of his daughter's emotional life, more detailed than anything Marcus could have compiled himself. You've been keeping track of all this? I wanted to understand how to help her, and I thought, maybe someday it would be useful for you to know. Marcus felt overwhelming gratitude and shame in equal measure. This woman, who barely knew him, had been documenting his daughter's inner life with the care and attention that he should have been providing. She had been hoping that eventually he would want to be the parent Chloe needed, and she had been preparing to help him succeed. As he flipped through the pages, Marcus saw his daughter through new eyes, her fears, her joys, her quirks and preferences, all carefully documented by someone who truly cared about her well-being. It was both a gift and an accusation, a roadmap to his daughter's heart and a record of his own failures. But it was also hope. If Esperanza could learn to understand Chloe so thoroughly, maybe he could too. Maybe it wasn't too late to become the father his daughter needed. The breakthrough came on a Thursday evening in late November. Marcus had been making an effort to be home for dinner every night, and while the conversations were still somewhat stilted, he could see Chloe beginning to relax around him. She was starting to share more about her day, her friends, her thoughts. That particular evening, as they sat at the dinner table eating Esperanza's homemade pozole, Chloe mentioned that her class was preparing for the winter holiday performance. "We're doing a play about families from around the world," she said, twirling her spoon in the soup. "Everyone has to talk about their family traditions." Marcus felt a pang of concern. "What are you going to say?" "I don't know yet. We don't really have traditions anymore, do we?" "Not since Mommy died." The casual way she said it, as if the absence of family traditions was simply a fact of life rather than a loss, made Marcus realize how much of their family identity had died with Amanda. She had been the one who decorated for holidays, who planned special meals, who created the memories that made their house feel like a home. What kind of traditions are the other kids talking about? Maria talks about making tamales with her grandmother for Christmas, and Josh talks about lighting candles for Hanukkah, and Sarah talks about how her whole family goes camping every summer. Chloe's voice grew wistful. I wish we had something special like that. That night, after Chloe had gone to bed, Marcus found himself in the kitchen with Esperanza again. These conversations had become a routine, a time when he could process the day's revelations about his daughter and his own shortcomings as a parent. Esperanza, Chloe mentioned that we don't have family traditions anymore. I hadn't realized how much we lost when Amanda died. Traditions are important for children, Esperanza said gently. They create security, help them understand their place in the world. What kind of traditions does your family have? Esperanza's face brightened. Oh, many things. Every Sunday, we make breakfast together, all of us. My oldest son, he makes the coffee. My daughter, she makes the eggs. My youngest, he sets the table. And I make the tortillas. It's simple, but it's ours. Marcus tried to imagine such a scene in his own home. The three of them, working together in the kitchen, talking and laughing. It seemed both appealing and completely foreign to his current reality. And for holidays? Christmas Eve. We make pozole, like tonight. It's my husband's recipe. And New Year's Day, we write letters to our family in Mexico and read them aloud. It helps us remember where we come from. The warmth in her voice as she described these rituals made Marcus acutely aware of what was missing from his own home. He and Chloe moved through their days with efficiency, but without joy, without the kind of meaningful connection that created lasting memories. Do you think it's too late to start new traditions? For Chloe and me? It's never too late, Mr. Caldwell. But traditions, they have to come from the heart. They have to mean something to both of you. Over the following weeks, Marcus began to pay closer attention to the moments when Chloe seemed happiest, most engaged. He noticed that she lit up when they cooked together, even simple things like making grilled cheese sandwiches. She loved it when he helped her with her Spanish homework, struggling through pronunciation while she giggled at his mistakes. And she always seemed more relaxed when they spent time on the terrace, tending to Amanda's rose garden. The roses had indeed been thriving under Esperanza's care, and Marcus learned that she had been involving Chloe in their maintenance. Every Saturday morning, while he slept late or worked in his office, Chloe and Esperanza would spend an hour watering, pruning, and talking to the plants. Esperanza says plants grow better when you talk to them, Chloe explained one Saturday when Marcus joined them on the terrace. She says, Mommy's roses know we love them because we tell them stories about her. 8. As Marcus knelt beside his daughter, helping her water the blooms that Amanda had loved so much, he felt a connection to his late wife that he hadn't experienced since her death. Through Esperanza's wisdom and Chloe's innocent faith, the rose garden had become a place of healing rather than painful remembrance. What kind of stories do you tell them? He asked. About how Mommy used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. About how she would sing to me before bed. About how she always made you laugh, even when you were grumpy about work. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. His daughter was keeping her mother's memory alive in ways he had been too afraid to attempt. While he had avoided talking about Amanda to spare himself pain, Chloe had been cherishing those memories and sharing them with the roses. Would you like to tell them a story together? Marcus asked. About something we all did as a family? Chloe's face lit up. Could we tell them about the time Mommy tried to make a birthday cake, and it fell apart, so we all ate it with spoons right out of the pan? Marcus smiled, remembering that chaotic but joyful afternoon. That's a perfect story. As they sat among the roses, sharing memories of Amanda, Marcus felt something shift. The garden became less a shrine to loss and more a celebration of love that continued even after death. And he began to understand what Esperanza had been trying to teach him. That healing didn't require forgetting, but rather finding ways to honor what had been lost while creating space for new growth. That evening, as Marcus tucked Chloe into bed, she surprised him with a question that would change everything. "Daddy, do you think Esperanza misses her husband the way we miss Mommy?" The question caught Marcus off guard. In all his observations of his housekeeper, he had focused on how she cared for Chloe, but he hadn't considered her own grief, her own struggles as a single parent trying to rebuild her life after loss. "I imagine she does, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" "Sometimes I see her looking sad when she thinks nobody is watching. And once I heard her crying in the laundry room, but when she saw me, she pretended she was fine." Marcus felt a sharp pang of recognition. How many times had he done the same thing, hiding his own grief behind a facade of business as usual, not realizing that children see more than adults think they do? "Maybe we could do something nice for her," Chloe continued, "to show her that we care about her feelings too." The suggestion revealed a level of emotional intelligence and empathy that Marcus hadn't fully appreciated in his daughter. While he had been focused on his own pain and responsibilities, Chloe had been observing and caring about the people around her, wanting to comfort others the way Esperanza had been comforting her. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, she's always taking care of us. Maybe we could take care of her for once?" As Chloe drifted off to sleep, Marcus lay awake thinking about her words. His daughter had identified something he had missed entirely. Their relationship with Esperanza had been entirely one-sided. She gave, they received. She nurtured, they consumed. She worried about their well-being, while he had never once asked about hers. The next morning, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. He asked Esperanza to sit down with him, not as an employee receiving instructions, but as a person whose story he wanted to understand. "Esperanza, I realize I know very little about your life outside of this house. Would you tell me about your children? About your husband?" For the first time since he had known her, Esperanza truly opened up. She told him about Miguel, her late husband, who had worked construction and played guitar on weekends, about her oldest son, Carlos, who was studying engineering and worked nights to help support the family, about her daughter, Isabella, who wanted to be a teacher but worried about paying for college, about her youngest, Diego, who was struggling in school since his father's death. As she spoke, Marcus began to see Esperanza as a complete person rather than just a service provider. She was a woman carrying enormous responsibilities, working multiple jobs before taking this position, sending money to elderly parents in Mexico while trying to support 3 teenagers in an expensive city. "The job here, it's been a blessing," she said quietly. "Not just the money, though, that helps so much. But being able to care for Chloe, it reminds me that I still have something to give, even when I feel broken." Marcus felt ashamed of how little he had considered her circumstances. He paid her well by housekeeper standards, but probably not enough for someone supporting 3 children alone in Portland. And he had never acknowledged the emotional labor she was providing, the way she had stepped into a maternal role for Chloe without being asked or compensated for that additional responsibility. "Esperanza, I want to do something for your family. Your son who wants to study engineering. Your daughter who wants to be a teacher. Let me help with their education." She looked shocked, then scared. "Mr. Caldwell, you don't need to do that. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's recognition. You've been caring for my daughter in ways that go far beyond your job description. You've been helping her heal, helping her grow, giving her the maternal love she needs. That's worth more than I could ever pay you." Tears filled Esperanza's eyes. "You don't understand. Taking care of Chloe, it helps me too. When I lost Miguel, I thought I had nothing left to give. But seeing her smile, helping her feel safe, it reminds me that love doesn't die just because someone is gone." Marcus felt the truth of her words resonate in his chest. Love doesn't die just because someone is gone. Amanda's love for Chloe lived on through his memories, through the stories they told the Roses, through the values she had instilled that still guided their daughter's heart. And somehow, Esperanza had understood this truth when he had not. "You've taught me something important, Esperanza, about how to love someone even when it's hard, even when you're scared of losing them. You've shown me what it means to put someone else's needs before your own." As their conversation continued, Marcus learned more about sacrifice and resilience from his housekeeper than he had from any business mentor or self-help book. Esperanza had lost everything and rebuilt her life around service to others, finding purpose in nurturing other people's children when her own were growing independent. That afternoon, Marcus made several phone calls. To his lawyer, to set up education funds for Esperanza's children. To his accountant, to ensure Esperanza received health insurance and retirement benefits. To his own HR department, to formalize her role and recognize the full scope of her contributions to their household. But more importantly, he called his assistant and cleared his calendar for the following day. There was something he needed to do with Chloe, something that couldn't wait for a more convenient time. The next morning, Marcus surprised his daughter by picking her up from school early. "We're going on an adventure," he told her, ignoring her confused questions. Their destination was a surprise even to him until they were standing in the lobby of the Portland Children's Hospital, holding bags of books and toys that they had hastily purchased on the way. "I thought we could visit some children who are in the hospital," Marcus explained to Chloe. Esperanza mentioned that when people are hurting, sometimes the best medicine is knowing that someone cares about them. What followed was one of the most meaningful afternoons of Marcus's life. He watched his 8-year-old daughter move through the pediatric ward with natural compassion, reading stories to younger children, sharing her toys, offering comfort in the unconscious way that only children can. But it was what happened in the last room they visited that would stay with Marcus forever. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, was crying inconsolably. Her parents looked exhausted and helpless. Without hesitation, Chloe went to the child's bedside and began speaking to her in Spanish, words she had learned from Esperanza. "She says her stomach hurts, and she's scared," Chloe translated for the parents. "I told her that when I'm scared, I think about people who love me, and it makes me feel braver." As they left the hospital that evening, Chloe was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "Daddy, I understand now why Esperanza takes care of me even when she's sad about her husband. Taking care of people makes the sadness smaller." Marcus realized that his daughter had learned something profound about the nature of love and service, something that he was only beginning to grasp himself. Esperanza hadn't been caring for Chloe despite her own grief. She had been caring for Chloe as a way of processing her grief, finding healing through giving. That night, as the three of them sat together in the kitchen sharing stories about their day, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since Amanda's death. The sense of being part of a real family. Not a perfect family, not a family without problems or pain, but a family that faced their struggles together, that found strength in caring for each other. December arrived with Portland's characteristic gray skies and steady rain. But inside the Caldwell penthouse, something had fundamentally shifted. Marcus had rearranged his work schedule to be home every evening by 6, and the dinner table had become a place of genuine conversation and connection. It was during one of these dinners that Chloe made an announcement that surprised both Marcus and Esperanza. "I've decided what I want to say for my class presentation about family traditions," she said, carefully cutting her chicken into small pieces. "I want to talk about how our family learned to take care of each other after Mommy died." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Well, when Mommy was alive, she took care of everyone. She took care of you when you were stressed about work, and she took care of me when I was sad or scared. But after she died, we forgot how to take care of each other. Daddy, you tried to take care of me by working really hard to make money, but you forgot that I needed you to be with me, too." The accuracy of her observation was devastating. Marcus glanced at Esperanza, who was listening intently while continuing to serve the meal. "And then Esperanza came to work for us, and she showed us how to take care of each other again. She taught me that when someone you love is hurting, you don't leave them alone. You sit with them, and you listen, and you remind them that they're not by themselves." Chloe paused, looking between the two adults. "So, our tradition is that we take care of each other. When Daddy has a bad day at work, we make him his favorite dessert. When I'm scared at night, Daddy reads me stories, and Esperanza makes me warm milk with honey. And when Esperanza is sad about her husband, we make sure she knows we love her too." Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes. His 8-year-old daughter had just articulated a philosophy of family that he, in all his business sophistication, had failed to understand. Family wasn't about providing material security or maintaining appearances. It was about showing up for each other, especially when it was difficult or inconvenient. "That sounds like a beautiful tradition," he said quietly. "The best part is that it works even when we're not perfect at it," Chloe continued. "Like, Daddy still works too much sometimes, and I still get scared about things I can't control. But we keep trying to take care of each other anyway." After dinner, as Esperanza cleaned the kitchen and Chloe worked on homework, Marcus found himself thinking about his daughter's words. "We keep trying to take care of each other anyway." Such a simple concept, but one that had eluded him for 2 years. That weekend, Marcus made another decision that would have seemed impossible months before. He asked Esperanza if her children would like to join them for Sunday dinner. "Mr. Caldwell, you don't have to do that," she protested. "My children, they're teenagers. They might be loud, messy. Esperanza, you've been sharing your children with me through your stories for weeks. I'd like to meet them properly. And I think Chloe would enjoy having other young people around." What followed was a revelation. Carlos, Isabella, and Diego arrived that Sunday dressed in their best clothes, clearly nervous about dining in such an opulent setting. But Chloe immediately took charge, showing them around the penthouse, explaining the view from the terrace, and proudly introducing them to her collection of books in Spanish. Marcus watched, fascinated, as his reserved daughter transformed into a confident hostess. She had learned this from watching Esperanza, he realized, the grace with which she made others feel welcome, the way she anticipated their needs and put them at ease. During dinner, Marcus discovered that Esperanza's children were remarkable young people. Carlos spoke passionately about sustainable engineering and his dream of designing affordable housing. Isabella talked about her volunteer work, tutoring elementary students, and her plans to become a bilingual teacher. Even Diego, the youngest, shared his interest in music and his goal of starting a band that played both traditional Mexican songs and contemporary music. But it was the dynamic between the siblings that really caught Marcus's attention. They teased each other with obvious affection, supported each other's dreams, and deferred to their mother with genuine respect. Despite their financial struggles and the loss of their father, they had maintained bonds that Marcus envied. "How do you do it?" he asked Esperanza later, as her children and Chloe played a board game in the living room. "How do you keep your family so connected when you're all dealing with so much?" "We talk about everything," she said simply. "The good things, the bad things, the scary things. We don't pretend that life is perfect, but we also don't let problems drive us apart. When one person is struggling, the others help carry the weight." Marcus thought about his own approach to family management. After Amanda's death, he had tried to shield Chloe from his grief, his stress, his fears about the future. He had thought he was protecting her, but instead, he had isolated both of them. "I've been doing everything wrong, haven't I?" "Not wrong, Mr. Caldwell. Just incomplete. You love Chloe very much, but you were afraid to let her see your love because you thought it would burden her. But children need to see that their parents are human. They need to know that adults have feelings too, that it's okay to be sad sometimes, that asking for help is not weakness." That evening, after Esperanza's family had gone home, Marcus sat with Chloe as she prepared for bed. The house felt different somehow, warmer and more alive after being filled with laughter and conversation from multiple generations. "Did you have fun today?" he asked. "I loved it, Daddy. Carlos said he would teach me about engineering, and Isabella said she would help me with my Spanish. And Diego is going to play his guitar for me next time." Marcus smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "They're wonderful kids, aren't they?" "They're like us," Chloe said thoughtfully. "Their daddy died too, but they still love each other. They still take care of each other." The simple observation hit Marcus with unexpected force. Esperanza's family had faced the same fundamental loss that he and Chloe had endured, but they had emerged from it stronger rather than more isolated. They had chosen to bind together rather than retreat into individual grief. "Chloe, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Have I been a good father to you since Mommy died?" His daughter was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus held his breath, afraid of what she might say. "You've been trying really hard to be a good father," she said finally. "But sometimes I think you forgot that being a good father means more than just making sure I have everything I need. It means showing me that you're happy I'm your daughter, not just that you're responsible for me." The distinction she drew was painfully accurate. Marcus had been fulfilling his parental obligations, but he hadn't been communicating joy in their relationship. He had been providing for Chloe's needs without celebrating her presence in his life. "You're right. I have been treating our relationship like a responsibility instead of a gift. I'm sorry." "It's okay, Dad. Esperanza says that people can't give love they don't feel, and after Mommy died, you needed time to remember how to feel love again." Marcus was amazed by his daughter's emotional sophistication. At 8 years old, she understood concepts about grief and healing that many adults struggled with. And once again, it was clear that Esperanza had been guiding her through these insights with wisdom and patience. "How did you get so smart about feelings? Esperanza talks to me about everything. When I'm sad, she doesn't just try to make me happy. She helps me understand why I'm sad and what I can do about it. She says feelings are like weather. They change, but you have to respect them while they're happening." As Marcus tucked his daughter into bed that night, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Esperanza had not only been caring for Chloe's immediate needs, she had been teaching her how to navigate the complex emotional landscape of loss and recovery. She had given his daughter tools for resilience that would serve her for the rest of her life. But more than that, Esperanza had been showing Marcus, through her example, what it meant to love someone completely and unconditionally. Her care for Chloe hadn't been transactional or conditional on good behavior or gratitude. It had been pure and generous, the kind of love that asked nothing in return except the opportunity to give. For the first time since Amanda's death, Marcus allowed himself to feel hope about the future. Not because their problems were solved or their grief was gone, but because he finally understood what it meant to build a family based on mutual care and genuine connection. The revelation that would change everything was still to come. But already Marcus knew that his life had been transformed by the quiet wisdom of a woman he had almost overlooked entirely. Christmas was approaching, and the Caldwell penthouse buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in 2 years. Marcus had embraced the holiday preparations with an enthusiasm that surprised even himself, determined to create new traditions that would honor Amanda's memory while establishing fresh foundations for their evolving family. Chloe had thrown herself into the planning with infectious joy. She wanted to make gifts for everyone instead of buying them, inspired by Isabella's stories about handmade Christmas celebrations. The dining room table had become a craft station where she worked on secret projects every evening after school. Esperanza had been teaching both Marcus and Chloe to make traditional Mexican Christmas foods. The kitchen often filled with laughter as Marcus struggled with masa for tamales, while Chloe attempted to roll out perfect tortillas. These cooking sessions had become cherished times of connection, where stories were shared and bonds deepened over shared tasks. It was during one of these cooking sessions, 3 days before Christmas, that Marcus's phone rang with a call that would shatter their peaceful routine. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Detective Morrison with Portland Police. I need to speak with you about your employee, Esperanza Morales." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. He stepped out of the kitchen, leaving Chloe and Esperanza to continue their work, and took the call in his office. "What about Esperanza? Is she in some kind of trouble?" "Sir, we've received some concerning information about Ms. Morales. We understand she has access to your home and takes care of your daughter. We'd like to schedule a time to discuss some background information that's come to our attention." The detective's words were carefully neutral, but Marcus could hear the serious undertone. His mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. Had Esperanza been stealing from them? Was there something in her past that made her unsuitable to care for Chloe? "Can you tell me what kind of information?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person, sir. Would you be available to come to the station tomorrow morning?" Marcus agreed to the meeting, though every instinct told him that whatever the police wanted to discuss, it would threaten the stability they had worked so hard to build. As he hung up the phone, he heard Chloe's delighted laughter from the kitchen, where she and Esperanza were clearly having success with whatever they were making. The contrast between the joy in the kitchen and the dread in his stomach was overwhelming. How could he reconcile the woman who had become essential to their family's healing with whatever troubling information the police had uncovered? That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through possibilities. Had he been naive to trust Esperanza so completely? Had his gratitude for her care of Chloe blinded him to potential red flags? The thought of having to remove her from their lives, especially so close to Christmas, made him feel physically ill. The next morning, Marcus sat across from Detective Morrison in a sterile interview room, his hands clasped tightly in his lap as he waited to hear whatever devastating information they had uncovered. "Mr. Caldwell, what can you tell me about Ms. Morales' background? How long has she worked for you? And what kind of access does she have to your home and your daughter?" Marcus explained their arrangement, emphasizing Esperanza's reliability and the positive impact she had had on Chloe's emotional recovery. As he spoke, he watched the detective's expression for clues about what was coming. "Sir, we've received information suggesting that Ms. Morales may not be who she claims to be. We have reason to believe she may be in the country illegally, using false documentation to secure employment." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, but not for the reasons the detective might have expected. His first thought wasn't about legal liability or potential problems with immigration authorities. His first thought was about Esperanza herself, about the fear she must live with every day, working in a system that could tear her away from her children at any moment. What kind of evidence do you have? We can't discuss the specifics of an ongoing investigation, but we wanted to make you aware that there may be issues with her legal status. We'd recommend that you exercise caution in your continued employment of Ms. Morales until these matters can be resolved. As Marcus drove home from the police station, his mind was churning. If Esperanza was undocumented, it explained so much about her behavior that he had attributed to simple reserve. Her reluctance to ask for help, her gratitude for employment that probably paid less than she deserved, her fear when he wanted to discuss her personal life. But it also raised complicated questions about his responsibilities as her employer and as someone who had come to care about her welfare. If she was discovered and deported, not only would he and Chloe lose someone who had become essential to their family, but Esperanza would be separated from her own children who depended on her. When he arrived home, Marcus found Chloe and Esperanza in the living room, working on what appeared to be a jigsaw puzzle of the Portland skyline. They looked up at him with matching smiles, and Marcus felt his heart break a little at their obvious contentment. "Daddy, look, we found all the edge pieces. Esperanza says the secret is to sort everything by color first." Marcus managed a smile, but Esperanza clearly sensed something was wrong. Her expression grew cautious as she studied his face. "Chloe, why don't you go work on your Christmas project upstairs? I need to talk to Esperanza about something." After Chloe had gone, leaving them alone in the living room, Marcus struggled to find the right words. How do you ask someone if they're living under false pretenses? How do you convey that you want to help rather than judge? "Esperanza, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know that whatever the answer is, we'll figure out how to handle it together." She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. "The police called me today. They have questions about your legal status in this country. They think you might be here without proper documentation." The color drained from Esperanza's face, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might faint. Her hands began to tremble, and she looked toward the stairs as if calculating whether she could escape before having this conversation. "Esperanza, look at me. I'm not going to call anyone. I'm not going to report anything. I just need to understand the situation so I can help you." She met his eyes, and he saw such fear and shame there that it nearly broke his heart. "I came here 15 years ago," she said quietly. "My visa expired, but Miguel was sick, and we couldn't afford to go back to Mexico. We stayed, and we tried to become legal, but the process was so expensive, so complicated. After Miguel died, I was afraid to apply for anything because I thought they would separate me from my children." Marcus felt a surge of anger at a system that put families in such impossible positions, but he kept his voice calm and reassuring. "So you've been living here for years, working, raising your children, contributing to the community, but without legal protection." She nodded, tears beginning to fall. "I know it was wrong. I know I should have found a way to fix it. But every year, it got harder, more expensive, and I was so afraid that if I tried to change anything, they would send me away, and my children would be alone." Marcus thought about Carlos, Isabella, and Diego, about their dreams and ambitions, about how their lives would be destroyed if their mother was suddenly removed from the equation. He thought about his own privilege, how his wealth and status protected him from ever having to make such desperate choices. "Esperanza, you're not a criminal. You're a mother trying to protect her children and build a life for your family. There's nothing shameful about that. But now you know, and you'll have to let me go. I understand. I would do the same thing to protect Chloe. Marcus felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him. No, I'm not letting you go. We're going to fix this. I'm going to hire the best immigration attorney in the city, and we're going to get your status resolved properly. Esperanza stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Caldwell, you can't do that. The legal fees, they could be tens of thousands of dollars, and there's no guarantee it will work. Let me worry about the money. You've been taking care of my daughter, helping her heal from losing her mother. You've been teaching me how to be a better father. You've made our house feel like a home again. If that's not worth fighting for, I don't know what is. As Esperanza broke down in tears of relief and gratitude, Marcus realized that this crisis had clarified something important for him. Esperanza wasn't just an employee who had exceeded expectations. She had become family in every way that mattered. And families protect each other regardless of legal technicalities or bureaucratic complications. The road ahead would be challenging, and there were no guarantees. But Marcus was determined to fight for the woman who had fought for his daughter when she needed it most. The investigation had revealed the truth, but not the truth he had expected. It had revealed that love and loyalty were more important than legal status, and that true family was built on commitment rather than documentation. The immigration attorney's office occupied the top floor of a downtown Portland high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the Willamette River. Marcus sat across from Sarah Chen, one of the most respected immigration lawyers on the West Coast, as she reviewed Esperanza's case file with the thoroughness that had made her reputation. "The situation is complex, but not hopeless," Sarah said, setting down the documents. "Mrs. Morales has been here for 15 years, has 3 U.S. citizen children, no criminal record, and a consistent employment history. These factors work in her favor. However, her extended period of undocumented status does present challenges." Marcus leaned forward. "What are our options?" "There are several potential pathways. Given that her children are U.S. citizens and she's been their primary support, we might be able to pursue cancellation of removal based on exceptional and extremely unusual hardship. Alternatively, if we can establish that her return to Mexico would create extreme hardship for her children, we have other options." As Sarah outlined the legal strategies, Marcus found himself thinking not about the complexity of immigration law, but about the human cost of the system they were navigating. Esperanza had been living in constant fear for years, unable to fully participate in American society despite being deeply rooted in the community. How long will this process take? Realistically, 18 months to 2 years, assuming no complications. And I have to be honest with you, Mr. Caldwell, there are no guarantees. Immigration cases can be unpredictable, especially in the current political climate. Marcus felt his stomach clench. 2 years of uncertainty, of not knowing whether Esperanza would be allowed to stay with her children, with them. 2 years of Chloe potentially losing another maternal figure. What can I do to help? Your support will be crucial. As her employer, your testimony about her character, her contributions to your family, and the hardship her removal would cause will carry significant weight. But, Mr. Caldwell, I need you to understand that this association might bring scrutiny to your own affairs. Are you prepared for that possibility? Marcus didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes. That evening, Marcus sat with Esperanza and her 3 children around his dining room table, explaining what the attorney had told him. Carlos, Isabella, and Diego listened with the grave attention of young people who had grown up understanding that their family's stability could never be taken for granted. "So we have a real chance?" Isabella asked, her voice carefully controlled. "We have a fighting chance," Marcus replied, "but it's going to require patience and courage from all of us. What if it doesn't work? Diego, the youngest, asked the question they were all thinking. Esperanza reached across the table and took her son's hand. Then we'll face whatever comes as a family. But we're not going to spend the next 2 years living in fear. We're going to live fully, love completely, and trust that doing the right thing will lead to the right outcome. Marcus was struck by her composure. Despite facing the possibility of deportation and separation from her children, Esperanza was focusing on how to live with dignity and hope rather than succumbing to terror. "There's something else," Marcus said. "I want to make sure you know that regardless of what happens with the legal case, I'm committed to supporting your family. Carlos, your engineering education is fully funded. Isabella, your teaching degree is taken care of. Diego, whatever path you choose, you'll have the resources you need." Carlos shook his head. "Mr. Caldwell, we can't accept that much help. It's too much." "It's not charity," Marcus replied firmly. "It's investment. Your mother has invested her heart, her time, her wisdom in my daughter's healing. She's helped me become a better father. That's worth more than any amount of money." Over the following months, as they navigated the complex legal process, Marcus gained a deeper appreciation for the immigrant experience in America. He accompanied Esperanza to meetings with government officials, sat through interviews where she had to prove her worthiness to remain in the country she had called home for 15 years. The most difficult moment came during a hearing where Esperanza had to testify about her life in Mexico and why returning would constitute extreme hardship for her children. Marcus watched her speak with quiet dignity about the poverty she had fled, the violence that had driven her family north, the opportunities her children had in America that would be lost if she were deported. "My son Carlos, he has been accepted to Portland State University for engineering," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "In Mexico, this dream would not be possible. My daughter Isabella, she tutors children in our neighborhood, helps them with homework in English and Spanish. She wants to be a teacher to help other immigrant children succeed. My youngest, Diego, he plays in the school orchestra, something that was never available to me as a child." As Esperanza spoke, Marcus realized that her case represented thousands of similar stories across the country. Families who had built lives, contributed to communities, raised American children, but lived in constant fear because of their legal status. The hearing officer, a stern woman in her 50s, asked pointed questions about why Esperanza hadn't attempted to legalize her status earlier. Marcus watched Esperanza struggle to explain the catch-22 that many undocumented immigrants faced, the fear that attempting to fix their status would expose them to deportation, combined with the overwhelming complexity and cost of the legal system. "After my husband died, I was afraid to do anything that might separate me from my children," Esperanza said simply. "I know now that I should have been braver, should have sought help sooner. But I was trying to survive, to keep my family together." During a break in the proceedings, Marcus found Esperanza sitting alone in the hallway, her hands shaking as she tried to drink water from a paper cup. "You're doing great," he told her. "You're being honest and dignified, and that's what matters." "What if it's not enough?" she whispered. "What if they decide I should have done everything differently?" Marcus sat beside her on the hard plastic chair. "Then we'll appeal, and we'll keep fighting. But Esperanza, regardless of what happens in this courtroom, you need to know that you've done nothing wrong. You came here seeking a better life for your children. You've worked hard, paid taxes, contributed to your community. You've raised 3 remarkable young people who are going to make America better. That's not something to apologize for." The legal battle continued through the spring, with mountains of paperwork, character references, and documentation of Esperanza's ties to the community. Marcus mobilized his business connections, securing letters of support from other employers, community leaders, and even some of his wealthy neighbors who had come to know Esperanza through her work. But it was Chloe's letter that moved Marcus the most. Written in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she had addressed it directly to the immigration judge. "Dear Your Honor, my name is Chloe Caldwell, and I am 8 years old. Esperanza takes care of me because my mommy died in a car accident. She helps me when I have bad dreams and teaches me Spanish and shows me how to take care of other people. If you send her away, I will be very sad and scared again. Please let her stay with her children and with me. She makes our family better. Love, Chloe." As Marcus read his daughter's words, he realized that she had articulated something profound about the nature of family and belonging. Esperanza hadn't just been taking care of Chloe. She had been helping create a new definition of family that transcended traditional boundaries. The waiting period after submitting all their documentation was excruciating. Every day brought the possibility of good news or devastating disappointment. But through it all, Marcus watched Esperanza maintain her grace and continue caring for his daughter with the same devotion she had always shown. It was during this period of uncertainty that Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He asked Esperanza if she would consider moving her family into the guest wing of his penthouse, at least until the legal situation was resolved. "It would give us more time together as a family," he explained. "And honestly, if something happens, if there's a problem with your case, I want to make sure you have as much support as possible." Esperanza was hesitant at first, worried about the implications of such an arrangement. But when Carlos, Isabella, and Diego enthusiastically endorsed the idea, she agreed to try it temporarily. The change in household dynamics was immediate and positive. Chloe thrived having other young people around, and Marcus found himself part of a bustling, multilingual household that felt more alive than his penthouse had ever been. Carlos helped Chloe with her math homework, patiently explaining concepts in both English and Spanish. Isabella taught her traditional Mexican dances, filling the living room with music and laughter. Diego played guitar in the evenings, creating an atmosphere of warmth that Marcus had forgotten was possible. But it was the quiet moments that meant the most to Marcus. Watching Esperanza teach all the children to make bread on Sunday mornings, seeing Chloe help Diego with his English pronunciation while he helped her with Spanish grammar, observing the easy way the family included him in their traditions while respecting his grief and his different way of expressing love. One evening, as Marcus worked late in his office, he heard soft voices from the living room. Through the doorway, he could see Esperanza sitting with all 4 children around the coffee table, helping them with various homework assignments. The scene reminded him of something Sarah Chen had said during one of their legal meetings. Family isn't just about blood relations or legal documents. It's about who shows up for you, who invests in your well-being, who chooses to love you day after day. Looking at this makeshift family that had formed in his living room, Marcus understood that they were already living the life they were fighting for in court. The legal recognition would be important, but the bonds they had formed were already real and unbreakable. The breakthrough in their legal case came from an unexpected source. One of the character witnesses Marcus had recruited was Judge Patricia Williams, a family court judge who had known Amanda through charity work. Judge Williams had agreed to write a letter of support, but she went further than that. "Marcus," she said during a phone call in late May, "I've been following Esperanza's case, and I think there might be another option we haven't considered. Given her extraordinary circumstances and her clear ties to the community, I might be able to facilitate a meeting with some colleagues who specialize in humanitarian cases." What Judge Williams had discovered was a little-known provision that allowed for expedited processing of cases involving primary caregivers of American citizens who could demonstrate exceptional community value. Esperanza's case was unusual because she wasn't just caring for her own children. She had become an essential caregiver for Marcus's daughter as well. The fact that she stepped into a maternal role for a grieving child without any legal obligation to do so speaks to her character in ways that transcend immigration status, Judge Williams explained. And your willingness to advocate for her, despite potential business complications, demonstrates the genuine nature of the family bond that's been formed. The final hearing was scheduled for early June, almost a year after the legal process had begun. Marcus, Esperanza, and all 4 children sat in the courtroom as Judge Rodriguez reviewed the final documents. The tension was palpable. Everyone understood that this decision would determine whether their family could remain together or would be torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. "Ms. Morales," Judge Rodriguez said, addressing Esperanza directly, "this court has reviewed your case extensively. While your initial entry and extended stay in this country without proper documentation cannot be overlooked, the evidence of your integration into American society, your contributions to your community, and most particularly your role as caregiver to both your own children and to Chloe Caldwell, presents compelling grounds for relief." Marcus felt his heart pounding as the judge continued. "The court finds that your removal would constitute exceptional and extremely unusual hardship to your U.S. citizen children, and that your moral character, despite the technical immigration violations, has been clearly established through extensive community testimony. Therefore, this court grants your application for cancellation of removal and adjustment of status to that of lawful permanent resident." The moment the judge's gavel fell, the courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Esperanza collapsed into tears of relief, while her children surrounded her with hugs and whispered congratulations. Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude and justice, knowing that this family would be able to stay together and continue building their American dream. But the real celebration happened that evening, back at the penthouse. Esperanza's extended family joined them for a dinner that lasted hours, filled with traditional foods, music, and storytelling. Marcus watched Chloe move easily between English and Spanish conversations, completely comfortable in this bilingual, bicultural environment that had become her normal. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself on the terrace with Esperanza, looking out over the Portland skyline while the children played games inside. "I still can't quite believe it's over," Esperanza said quietly. "For so many years, I lived with the fear that one day someone would knock on my door and take me away from my children. Now, for the first time since Miguel died, I feel truly safe." "You were never just an employee to us," Marcus said. "You became family, and families fight for each other. You saved us, Mr. Caldwell, not just with the legal fees, but by treating us like we mattered, like we belonged." Marcus shook his head. "You saved us first, Esperanza. When I was drowning in grief and work, when I was failing Chloe in every way that mattered, you stepped in and showed us both what love looked like. You taught me that being a good father isn't about providing material things. It's about showing up emotionally, consistently, even when it's hard." As they stood together in comfortable silence, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that night when he had discovered Esperanza comforting Chloe through the security camera. What had seemed like a simple employer-employee relationship had evolved into something much more complex and meaningful. A chosen family built on mutual care, respect, and commitment. The legal victory was important, but it was only the formal recognition of bonds that had already been forged through daily acts of love and sacrifice. Esperanza had taught him that family isn't defined by traditional structures or legal documents, but by who shows up for you in your darkest moments and chooses to stay, even when staying is difficult. 6 months after the immigration hearing, the Caldwell penthouse had settled into a rhythm that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. What had begun as a temporary arrangement during the legal proceedings had evolved into a permanent redefinition of family that worked for everyone involved. Marcus had converted the guest wing into a proper apartment for Esperanza and her children, complete with a small kitchen and living area that gave them privacy while keeping them close to Chloe and him. The arrangement had practical benefits. Esperanza no longer had to worry about commuting across the city, and her children had access to better schools and opportunities. But more importantly, it had created a family structure that met everyone's emotional needs. Chloe was thriving in ways that amazed Marcus daily. Her Spanish had become fluent through constant practice with Diego and Isabella. Her confidence had grown exponentially from having older siblings who included her in their activities and treated her as an equal rather than a child to be managed. Most significantly, her anxiety about losing her remaining parent had diminished as she found security in the stability of their expanded family unit. "Daddy, can Carlos help me with my science project?" Chloe asked one evening as Marcus returned from work. She was sitting at the kitchen counter doing homework while Esperanza prepared dinner, a scene that had become beautifully routine. "Of course, sweetheart. What's the project about?" "We're supposed to design a sustainable house that could work in different climates. Carlos says he can show me how to think like an engineer." Marcus smiled, remembering his own struggles with school projects as a child, always completed alone because his parents were too busy with their own concerns. Chloe would never have that experience. She was surrounded by people who were invested in her success and eager to share their knowledge. The dinner table conversations had become Marcus's favorite part of each day. 5 people, 3 languages intermixed, discussions ranging from Diego's latest musical compositions to Isabella's student teaching experiences to Carlos's internship at a local engineering firm. Chloe contributed her own observations about second-grade social dynamics and her latest discoveries in the books Esperanza continued to recommend. "Mr. Caldwell," Isabella said one evening, "I wanted to thank you again for supporting my education. I got my acceptance letter to the graduate program today." Marcus felt a surge of pride. "That's wonderful, Isabella. You've worked so hard for this." "I've been thinking about my thesis project," she continued. "I want to study bilingual education programs and how they can better serve immigrant families. I want to help other children like Chloe learn to navigate between cultures without losing either one." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that his daughter, who had been born into privilege and American citizenship, was the one learning to navigate between cultures. But rather than seeing this as a burden, he had come to view it as a gift. Chloe was growing up truly bilingual and bicultural, with an understanding of different perspectives that would serve her throughout her life. It was during one of their regular family meetings, a tradition they had established to make sure everyone's needs were being addressed, that Marcus made an announcement that surprised even himself. "I've been thinking about making some changes to my work schedule," he said, looking around the table at the faces that had become so important to him. "I want to step back from some of my responsibilities at the company so I can be more present for all of you." Carlos looked concerned. "Mr. Caldwell, please don't change your career because of us. We don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Marcus said firmly. "You're my priority, all of you. I spent 2 years after Amanda died thinking that working more would somehow make me a better provider for Chloe. But I learned that being present is more important than being successful, and that family is more valuable than any business achievement." Esperanza nodded approvingly. "Balance is important, especially when you have people depending on you for more than just money." "Actually, that brings me to another announcement," Marcus continued. I've been talking to some other business leaders about creating a foundation focused on supporting immigrant families through the legal residency process. I want to make sure other families don't have to go through what we went through, worrying about being separated because of bureaucratic complications. The idea had been growing in Marcus's mind for months. His experience with Esperanza's case had opened his eyes to the struggles faced by thousands of families living in legal limbo. He had the resources and connections to make a real difference, and he finally understood that true success meant using his advantages to help others. "That's beautiful, Daddy," Chloe said. "Like what Esperanza did for me, but for whole families." The parallel his daughter drew was perfect. Esperanza had seen a child in need and stepped in to help, not because it was her job, but because it was the right thing to do. Now Marcus wanted to do the same thing on a larger scale, using his resources to strengthen families rather than just accumulating more wealth. Over the following months, as Marcus began transitioning some of his business responsibilities to trusted colleagues and launching the Immigration Support Foundation, he discovered something that Amanda had tried to tell him years before. True fulfillment came from meaningful relationships and purposeful work, not from financial achievements or social status. The Foundation's first major initiative was partnering with Sarah Chen's law firm to provide pro bono legal services to families facing immigration challenges. They also created an emergency fund to help families meet basic needs during the lengthy legal processes, ensuring that children could remain in school and parents could continue working while their cases were resolved. "You know what I love most about this?" Esperanza said one evening as they reviewed applications for foundation support. "You're helping families stay together. You understand now that being together is what matters most." Marcus nodded, thinking about his own journey from isolated grief to connected healing. "I used to think that protecting my family meant working harder to provide more security. But I learned that real security comes from emotional connection and mutual support." The most meaningful validation of their new family structure came from an unexpected source. Chloe's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, requested a meeting to discuss her students' remarkable transformation over the past year. "I have to tell you, Mr. Caldwell, the change in Chloe has been extraordinary," Mrs. Patterson said. "She's always been a bright child, but now she's confident, empathetic, and shows remarkable emotional intelligence for her age. She's become a natural leader in helping other students who are struggling." "What kinds of things is she doing?" "Well, we have several children from immigrant families who sometimes struggle with English or feel isolated because of cultural differences. Chloe has naturally become their advocate and friend. She helps them with language barriers, includes them in playground activities, and even taught the class some Spanish phrases so everyone could communicate better." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. His daughter was replicating the kindness and inclusion she had experienced at home, creating a more welcoming environment for other children who might feel different or left out. She also talks about her family in ways that show remarkable maturity. Mrs. Patterson continued, "She understands that families can be formed in different ways, and she's proud of the multicultural, multilingual household you've created. She sees diversity as a strength rather than a complication." As Marcus drove home from the parent-teacher conference, he reflected on how completely his understanding of family had been transformed. 2 years ago, he had seen family as a responsibility to be managed alongside his career obligations. Now he understood that family was the foundation that made everything else meaningful. The evening light was fading as he pulled into the parking garage of his building, but he could see the warm glow from his penthouse windows 20 floors above. Up there, Esperanza was probably helping Diego with homework, while Isabella set the table for dinner. Carlos might be showing Chloe something on his engineering textbooks, and all of them would be chattering in the comfortable mixture of languages that had become their family's unique dialect. For the first time since Amanda's death, Marcus felt genuinely excited to go home. Not because it was the end of a workday, but because home was where his heart lived, where the people he loved were waiting for him, where he could be not just a provider, but a father, a friend, a member of a family that had chosen each other across lines of culture, language, and legal status. The security cameras that had first revealed Esperanza's nighttime comfort of Chloe were still recording, but Marcus no longer needed them to understand what was happening in his home. He was present for the bedtime stories, the homework help, the quiet conversations that built trust and connection. He was finally living the life he had been too afraid to embrace after Amanda's death. A life built on love rather than fear, on presence rather than productivity, on family bonds that transcended traditional definitions and legal documents. 1 year later, on a crisp December evening, Marcus stood in the same spot where he had first watched those security camera recordings that had changed everything. But now, instead of staring at a screen in his darkened office, he was standing in Chloe's doorway, watching a scene that had become beautifully familiar. Esperanza sat on the edge of Chloe's bed, but tonight she wasn't comforting a crying child. Instead, she was listening as 9-year-old Chloe read aloud from a bilingual children's book, her pronunciation in both languages confident and clear. Isabella and Diego were curled up in the window seat, supposedly working on their own reading but clearly enjoying Chloe's animated storytelling. And the little girl realized that having 2 families didn't mean she was divided in half, Chloe read, her voice carrying the wisdom that children sometimes possess naturally. It meant she was twice as loved. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. The book was one that Esperanza had found at a local bookstore, a story about a child navigating life between 2 cultures, 2 languages, 2 ways of seeing the world. It might have been written specifically for their family. "That's beautiful, mi amor," Esperanza said, using the term of endearment that had naturally evolved from their relationship. "What do you think the story means?" Chloe considered the question with the seriousness she brought to all important discussions. "I think it means that love makes families, not just being born into them. Like how Carlos and Isabella and Diego became my brother and sisters even though we don't have the same parents. And how you became like my mom even though my real mom is in heaven." The simple profundity of her statement took Marcus's breath away. His daughter understood something about the nature of family that many adults never grasped, that love creates bonds stronger than blood, that chosen relationships can be just as meaningful as biological ones, that families can expand to include everyone who commits to showing up with care and consistency. "And what about your daddy?" Isabella asked, glancing toward the doorway where Marcus stood. "How does he fit into your 2 families?" "Oh, Daddy's the bridge," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "He learned how to be part of both families, too. Before, he was just part of our English family, the one that was sad and quiet. But now he's part of our Spanish family, too, the one that talks a lot and laughs and takes care of each other." Marcus had to step back from the doorway for a moment, overwhelmed by his daughter's insight. She had perfectly captured his own transformation, from a man isolated by grief and privilege to someone who had learned to embrace a more expansive, inclusive definition of belonging. When the bedtime routine was complete and the house had settled into its evening quiet, Marcus found himself in the kitchen with Esperanza, as had become their custom. But tonight, instead of discussing the day's events or tomorrow's plans, they sat in comfortable silence, both reflecting on how far they had all come. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Marcus asked. "When I saw you comforting Chloe through the cameras?" Esperanza smiled. "Every day. I was so scared when you asked me about it. I thought you would fire me for overstepping boundaries." "I almost did," Marcus admitted. "I was so focused on maintaining professional distance that I couldn't see what Chloe actually needed. I couldn't see what I needed either. Fear makes us do strange things, Esperanza said gently. You were afraid of getting too close to anyone, because you didn't want to risk losing them the way you lost Amanda. I was afraid of getting too close because I didn't want to lose my job and my ability to support my children. But sometimes fear protects us from the wrong things. Marcus nodded, thinking about all the connections he had avoided after Amanda's death, all the opportunities for love and support he had rejected because they felt too risky. Chloe saved us both, in a way. Her need for comfort forced us to move past our fears. Children have a way of showing us what really matters, Esperanza agreed. They don't care about professional boundaries or legal status or cultural differences. They just know when they need love, and they trust that the adults in their lives will provide it. As if summoned by their conversation, Chloe appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing her favorite pajamas and carrying the stuffed elephant that had been a gift from Isabella. I can't sleep, she announced. My brain is too excited about tomorrow. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and they had planned an elaborate celebration that combined traditions from both families. They would attend midnight mass at the church, where Esperanza's family worshipped, then return home for a feast that included both traditional Mexican dishes and some of Amanda's favorite recipes that Marcus had finally been brave enough to recreate. What's exciting your brain? Marcus asked, pulling his daughter onto his lap. Everything. The presents, the food, having abuela and abuelo here, showing Carlos how to make mommy's sugar cookies, teaching Diego the Christmas songs in English. She paused, considering. But mostly I'm excited because it feels like the first real Christmas since Mommy died. Marcus felt a pang at the reminder of the 2 previous Christmases, which they had endured rather than celebrated, going through minimal motions while both struggling with grief too large for the season's joy. What makes this one feel different? He asked. Because now I know that Christmas isn't about everything being perfect, or pretending we're not sad about people who aren't here anymore. It's about being grateful for the people who are here and finding ways to include the people we miss. Esperanza reached over and smoothed Chloe's hair. You are a very wise little girl. Isabella taught me that. She said that in her family, they always set an extra place at Christmas dinner for family members who have died so they can still be part of the celebration. Can we do that for Mommy? And for your husband, Miguel? Marcus felt tears threatening again. His daughter's capacity for inclusion and remembrance continued to amaze him. She wanted to honor both families' losses while celebrating their current blessings. Of course we can do that, sweetheart. I think that's a beautiful way to include everyone we love. The next evening, as they gathered around the extended dining room table for their Christmas Eve feast, Marcus looked at the 2 empty place settings that Chloe had carefully arranged with Amanda's favorite dishes and a photograph of Miguel that Esperanza had brought. The gesture didn't feel morbid or sad. Instead, it felt like a recognition that love continues even when physical presence ends. Carlos offered a toast in Spanish, which Isabella translated for Marcus and Chloe. To families that choose each other, to love that crosses all boundaries, and to the courage to build something new without forgetting what we've lost. As they raised their glasses, sparkling cider for the children, wine for the adults, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. Not because their story was over, but because he finally understood what it meant to live fully in the present while honoring the past and embracing an uncertain but hopeful future. The meal was chaotic and beautiful, with multiple conversations happening simultaneously in 2 languages. Children and adults sharing stories and jokes. Food passed family style around a table that had once felt too large and formal for daily use. This was what Marcus had been missing during his years of isolation. The messy, joyful, complicated reality of family life. After dinner, as they moved to the living room for gift exchanges and Diego played his guitar, Marcus found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. 2 years ago, he had been a man drowning in grief, work, and emotional isolation, failing his daughter in the most fundamental ways. Tonight, he was surrounded by people who had chosen to love him and include him in their definition of family, despite his mistakes and limitations. The transformation hadn't been magical or simple. It had required him to confront his fears, acknowledge his failures, and learn to prioritize relationships over achievements. It had meant embracing vulnerability and accepting help from someone he had initially seen as merely an employee. Most importantly, it had required him to understand that being a good father meant more than providing material security. It meant showing up emotionally, consistently, even when it was difficult or inconvenient. As Chloe fell asleep later that night, surrounded by wrapping paper and new books in both English and Spanish, she looked up at Marcus with drowsy contentment. "Daddy, do you think Mommy would be happy about our family now?" Marcus considered the question seriously, thinking about Amanda's values, her capacity for love, her belief in the importance of community and connection. "I think Mommy would be very proud of the person you've become, and very grateful to Esperanza and her family for taking such good care of both of us. I think she would love seeing how much joy and laughter we have in our home now." "I think so too," Chloe agreed sleepily. "I think she would say that we learned how to be a family again, just in a different way than before." As Marcus turned off the lights and headed to his own room, he passed the hallway where those security cameras still hung, silent witnesses to the daily rhythms of their reconstituted family. He no longer needed technology to monitor what was happening in his home. He was present for the bedtime stories, the homework help, the quiet conversations that built trust and connection day by day. The cameras had revealed a truth he hadn't been ready to see: that love often appears in unexpected forms, offered by unexpected people, at moments when we think we're beyond help. Esperanza's comfort of a crying child had been the beginning of their family's healing, but it had also been a lesson in how grace operates in ordinary life, quietly, persistently, through small acts of care that accumulate into transformative love. As Marcus settled into sleep that Christmas Eve, he felt profound gratitude for the woman who had seen his daughter's need and responded with her whole heart. Not because it was her job, but because it was her nature. Esperanza had taught them all that families aren't just born. They're created through daily choices to show up, to care, to stay present even when it's difficult. The investigation that had begun with security footage had revealed the deepest truth of all: that love is the force that builds families, crosses cultural boundaries, and creates homes where everyone belongs. And sometimes, the family we need most is the one we never expected to find. In the end, the cameras had captured more than just a housekeeper comforting a child. They had documented the beginning of a love story. Not a romantic love, but something equally powerful. The love that creates chosen families, bridges differences, and proves that home is anywhere people commit to caring for each other completely and unconditionally. Marcus Caldwell had set out to investigate his employees' nighttime activities and had discovered instead the true meaning of family, fatherhood, and the kind of love that transforms everyone it touches. The woman who had consoled his daughter in the darkness had led them all into the light. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments. What rating would you give from 0 to 10? Your feedback is so important to help us create even better stories. Also, let us know which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and stay with us for more emotional stories like this. check the final screen. There's another story waiting to move you even more. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this community.